Alright guys and gals, what we're going to do today is we're going to have a quick look at how to store your cherry tomatoes over winter. Now this is without canning or like this is a method of food preservation, but it's without doing preserves or breaking out a water bath or a pressure canner or anything like that. So first of all, you're going to need obviously your cherry tomatoes. Now this was today's cherry tomato harvest. As you can see, it's not quite big enough to fill an entire cookie sheet. It was just enough to fill this pizza pan, which is fine. I mean, any of you guys and gals that have ever grown cherry tomatoes, you know for a fact that one day you can harvest like a pint maybe of cherry tomatoes, if that. And then some other days you might get a half bushel, right? So you know, none of my other tomatoes are ready to come in yet. Like my San Marzanos aren't ready, so I'm not doing tomato sauce or spaghetti sauce or stewed tomatoes or anything like that to put back just yet. So I couldn't just go ahead and throw these into a sauce. And you know, it's way too many for me to eat here right now. So I want to preserve them and put them back for winter. You're not going to need a lot for that. What you're going to need is some nice oil, nice extra virgin olive oil. Some garlic, some salt. In this case, I used a Mediterranean sea salt, and you're going to need just like a regular olive oil, not your expensive stuff. You're going to need some. This is fresh thyme out of the garden, and this is fresh basil. The equipment you need, obviously, a cookie sheet or a tray of some type, some kind of jar. It doesn't have to be a mason jar with a proper sealing lid. It can be any recovered salvage jar. Just sterilize it in the way you do. I threw mine, washed it obviously, and then threw it in the oven for, at 230 for about 40 minutes, and that does the trick for that. So yeah, there's not a whole lot to it. So let's just get right to it. It's very, very simple. You take your tomatoes. Now I'm going to have to wash my hands a few times through this process because it is going to get a little bit messy. I'm going to use my hands to pick these up. Now what I did with these cherry tomatoes here before I'm using them, you can see that they're wilted, right? I just drizzled them with olive oil and I hit them with some of that Mediterranean sea salt. And I roasted them in a 400 degree oven for about 20 minutes. These were actually in there for about 25, but what that does is give your tomatoes a nice roasted flavor and drives a bunch of the moisture out of them. I'll show you at the end of this how much moisture is left on that pan, how much water came out of these tomatoes. So yeah, I'm just using my hand to do this. Now depending on this variety of cherry tomatoes, these are Sweet Millions. It's a fairly small cherry tomato. And they're very, very sweet. And the millions part, yeah, the plant produces a lot of them. They just don't always come in at the same time. Okay, all right. So we have some of our tomatoes into the jar here. Just gonna clean up my hands real quick here. And at this point what we're going to do is we're going to take some of our herbs and our garlic, and we're going to put some of that in. Now when you go to put your to roast off your tomatoes, if you want to put pepper on it or any other sort of flavorant, you can go ahead. You can flavor profile this any way you want to. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this nice fresh basil right out of the garden, and I'm just going to go ahead and tear that, pop it right in the jar. Okay, I think you guys and gals can see what's going on there. Let me just center this up a little bit more for you. See what's going on. So yeah, I just tear my basil and throw it right in. Very, very simple to do, and you can do this with any amount of tomatoes. You can use a smaller jar or a larger jar, depending on what your today's harvest is, right? You can use fresh garlic. I have this pre-minced garlic. So I'm going to drop a nice, healthy No. Put a tablespoon in there of that. And I'm going to take some of these fresh thyme sprigs, and I'm just going to drop those right in. I'm going to drop them in whole. I'm not going to bother taking the thyme leaves off the stem. That way later you can just fish out the entire stem. Don't eat these. They can be tough. So we'll do that. Then we'll get some more tomatoes in on top of this, okay? Very, very simple and easy to do. Now, when you preserve your tomatoes like this should last you no problem in your refrigerator all winter. And this is great for, in the wintertime, if you're cooking something and you want that nice, fresh hit of summertime flavor. These are amazing on a sandwich. You can just have them with your eggs in the morning. Throw them in an omelet or a frittata. They're great on a pizza. Amazing on a pizza. Okay, you can put it in a falafel or a pita or into a nice fresh winter soup. Just for that nice fresh summer flavor during winter. So easy to do. Doesn't take up hardly any time. You're not left with a big mess, and the flavoring is delicious. Now, I mean, if you wanted to, I'm not a big spice guy, but I did happen to have some jalapenos grow in my garden this year. I had a few jalapeno plants, and I was blessed with some of that. So if you wanted to chop some of that up and throw it in there for a bit of a spice, you could do that too, right? All right, we got some more tomatoes in there. I'm just going to rip up some more of this beautiful garden fresh basil. Get that in there. You can use as much or as little as you like. I'm going to go ahead and use all I've got here. It's not gonna hurt anything. It's going to just enhance the flavor over winter. Yeah, this is delicious on a garlic bread or bruschetta. So many different ways you can use this. And then again, with the fresh thyme, I'm just going to go ahead and drop the rest in. Touch more garlic, because I love garlic. If you've got fresh, use it. I don't, so I'm using this. Alright, that we're done with. Get the rest of these tomatoes in here. Very, very simple and easy to do. If you can turn the oven on and wash your hands, you can do this. I mean, mind you, you've got to have cherry tomatoes as well, but that being the case, cherry tomatoes, a few fresh herbs, some olive oil, you're good. You're set to go. No problem. It is a bit messy to do. Yeah, you will wash your hands several times through this process, simply because it's a little messy. It's just super easy to scoop up the tomatoes with your hands and do it that way, rather than try and fiddle around with just some type of scoop or a spoon or a fork or whatever. All right, now I have my handy dandy muddler. Ooh, before I do that, before I get these muddled down, I'm going to show you all the water that came off of these tomatoes. You can see it there down in the bottom. A ton of water came off those tomatoes. And that's what you don't really want. You don't want all that water in your preserved tomatoes like this. Now it looks like I could have probably have gotten away with a pint jar. This is a quart jar I'm using here. What we're going to do now with this muddler, like, you can get in there with your fingers if you want and press it down with your fingers, but I find this muddler works just fine and dandy to get that done. And as you can see, I'm not really stamping them down, I'm just kind of pressing them down so that it's all flat, right? So in there, can go ahead and go there. And at this point, we're pretty much done. All we need to do at this point, this is when you use your sort of average olive oil, okay? So all we're gonna do is we're gonna top this with olive oil. And I'm probably gonna give it, maybe a ½ inch of olive oil on top of that. Once you get your olive oil in, whoops, you want to take your debubbler. You can use like a kitchen knife, a butter knife if you want, or whatever. And you just want to go down around it. Make sure you let out any air bubbles. And what this will also allow to happen is that olive oil will get down in and around the edges of it too. Okay? So the key to this whole thing is making sure everything is covered with olive oil. So if you've got any of your fruit or your herbs or anything sticking up above your olive oil, you want to press that down. And if there's an unruly piece of thyme there wanting to stick up on me, maybe I should have broken that up a little bit more. Okay, so you get that done, you get it all packed down underneath the surface of your olive oil. And then you just top it up again to make sure everything is covered nicely with olive oil. And that's pretty much it. There's not a lot more to it than that. I'm just going to use a paper towel to clean this up a wee bit. And like I said, you can use any jar. You don't need to use a proper mason jar that where the top seals or anything like that. I happen to be using that today because I do have some around and I've got some in storage. Okay, so once I've got it cleaned up here, I've just got a little bit of vinegar. So I'm going to put some of that on my paper towel and just go around and clean it up just to make sure it's nice and clean. And then on the lid goes. And like I said, these tomatoes are going to store in your refrigerator until next harvest season, until your cherry tomatoes start to produce again next year. So it's a very, very good method of preservation. And you can do this with a number of other vegetables as well. So if you've got a partial cherry tomato harvest, go ahead and do this. Preserve it for winter for that nice fresh flavor pop. And, you know, like I said, put it on your pizzas, on your bruschetta. Hey, put it over a hamburger or whatever if you grill a hamburger over the winter. It's very, very nice, fresh hit of summer during the winter time. And a great way to preserve your partial harvest of cherry tomatoes. So I hope you guys and gals find that useful. Let me know if you guys do something similar. And, you know, if there's any variation in what you guys and gals do. And let's learn from the other, okay? Stay low and safe all. This is going to be North. Out for now.